synthesis in quality, in just a minute, just admitting someone. Okay, so he's going to tell us about data synthesis in qualitative and quantitative systematic review. Remember, we've been doing this webinar for some time now. We've had him taking us through the different methods in systematic review. Today, we are focusing on how to synthesize the data that we generate from both quantitative and qualitative reviews. Okay. So, Tony, do you want to go ahead and start?
Yes, I can.
Yes, please. Okay, so thank you. Now, if you have any questions, you can put them in the chat, and then as we go along, he is going to ask questions and then we'll respond to it, if that's okay with us. Okay. Yeah. Now, I hope I have your permission. The webinar is being recorded so that we can share with other colleagues who are unable to join us. If that's okay, if you can give me a thumbs up.
Yeah, that is okay with me.
Okay. Okay. So thank you very much. Tony, over to you.
Thank you, Augustina. So today we're going to continue from where we left off at that time. Because as we were saying, this is the 7th of the series in evidence synthesis. It's a lot. We've taken the journey has been long, but sometimes when we do it this way, because it's disjointed, you don't see how far we've moved. So today, webinar 7, we are dealing with data synthesis in qualitative and quantitative systematic reviews. And then I'm the one presenting. Now, I want to make disclosures now because Tony, the presenter today, has an affiliation with the following organizations that could be perceived as a direct or indirect conflict of interest in the context or content of this webinar. I think nowadays, because of copyrights and other things, we have to disclose some of these disclosures, and let's see, conflict of interest and other things. So as you can see, you can read out the organizations and then the teams that I belong to, which may be perceived.
Tony, sorry to interrupt. Is it possible to do full screen?
Yes, I just remembered in doing it. So,
okay.
So these are the disclosures. So let's move on to what this is the series of events that have taken place already. You know, the ones in light blue, we have covered all of them. We started with formulating an appropriate review question, developing the review protocol, and then searching for studies and managing the search output, screening and selecting studies, assessing quality of the included studies. That is what we did last time. And then extract and manage the data. That one we incorporated it as part of the quality assessment. We did that one before this. And now we are at the level of a synthesis of data. And over here, let me say that systematic reviewing is a process. So once you begin the process, you have to go through all the processes. So the qualitative synthesis is the same as the quantitative synthesis in terms of the process. But there are some areas that differences occur. These are the areas that have highlighted over here. When we come to the assessment of quality or risk of bias in the studies, we have a way of assessing the qualitative ones as compared to the quantitative studies. And then when you come to synthesis, that is where we have a clear dichotomy between qualitative and quantitative. And as you can see from the flyer and the topic under discussion today, we are looking at synthesis from the area of qualitative and quantitative, but I'm going to consider qualitative today. Initially, I wanted to do all of them together. If I do together, it will be something like I'll have to run through without actually building capacity. But the essence of this webinars are to build capacity, particularly in low and middle income countries where this evidence synthesis is now just begun. So most people who are on the platform or joining the webinar might not have already done a systematic review, so there's no point rushing through them. So I'm spending a bit of time on the qualitative, although I'm not a qualitative person, but because I've been teaching, I have incorporated that aspect as part of my teachings, and now I'm also skewing towards even the qualitative part as well. So what is synthesis? That is the question you have to ask ourselves, because all the things that we have been doing, evidence synthesis. So then if we take the evidence out, it remains with synthesis. And what is synthesis? Synthesis, as used in systematic reviews, is the process of bringing together data from a set of included studies, meeting pre-specified inclusion criteria with the aim of drawing conclusions about a body of evidence. This is from the Cochrane Handbook. So the whole idea is that we're bringing studies together, pool the data extracted with the aim of drawing conclusions, or sometimes just conclusion, one single statement about them. That is so because policymakers, normally they don't need a lot of evidence. They need one or two recommendations to make. And so you have to be able to build that evidence to give one statement or two for policymakers, practitioners, and those who need to use the evidence to use it. So when we move from synthesis, then we come to the forms of synthesis that we may come across. We've talked about them over and over again. We have the qualitative, otherwise known as narrative synthesis, and we have the quantitative synthesis. And under the qualitative, we can have all these thematic, realist synthesis, meta-ethnography, meta-aggregation. And then there's a few more that we can add over here, but these are the main ones that we'll come across. So, and then when we come to the quantitative synthesis, we may have the frequencies or the Bayesian synthesis. And under that, we have the meta-analysis, you have the meta-regression, and you have the diagnostic meta-analysis and others. You will come across so many of them. And apart from that, you may also have other forms that people would call rapid, what not, scoping, and other things. But those fall, each of them will fall under one of these categories, qualitative or quantitative. So qualitative, now let us move to qualitative synthesis, because that is what I'm going to take you through today. Now these are some information that you need to take before we move on. Not all questions that arise in clinical practice can be assessed statistically, we all know. So qualitative systematic reviews aim to increase understanding. That is the word that I want you to understanding, insight, things that you cannot assess quantitatively. And that is what these are the ones that will fall under the qualitative paradigm. So if you want to get insight, knowledge, understanding, those are not things that you can, they are subjective and you can't measure them quantitatively using numbers. So that is where qualitative synthesis becomes important. These include how individuals and communities perceive health, the way people perceive health, their own health, to make decisions related to the health care systems and all the other things, taking into consideration context, culture, and any other thing that you can, those who work in the social sciences, you know, those in the context, there's some of the constructs and other things that you use to describe some of these things. Those are the ones that qualitative studies would consider. And when we go to the quantitative, you see there's a complete dichotomy, departure from here. Everything over there would be the frequency, the statistics, and those things. But if on every systematic review, even the quantitative will have some aspect of qualitative aspect to it. So let's move on to us with, I'm jumping this bullet and going to the first one. As with qualitative studies, as with quantitative studies, the results from a single qualitative study should really be used to guide practice. Why is this so? Because the quantitative study said, no, it is not advisable. When I started with the sensitization, the first webinar I did, said that it has been acknowledged that it is not advisable to use a single study to inform a policy or decision. Why do we say that? Because the independent studies, each of them might mislead. And I showed you a forest plot that showed some clinical trials conducted, well-conducted one, about 12 of them, all of them getting the evidence wrong, except one. And then when everything was pooled, we built all the things together, then we found a common statement, a common estimate to inform, and that was the true estimate. When we're talking about quantitative, I'll talk about them, the true estimates and all those things, and what describe the true estimate and why it is not possible to always get the true estimate, but use sample. That one will be the quantitative domain. But the qualitative is also not advisable to use one single qualitative study to inform a decision or policy. And the reason is that that may mislead, because qualitative studies sometimes, depending on the method that you use, you have focus group discussion, and maybe use 2 or 3 or maximum 5 people to gather information about the whole topic. Sometimes you use single person telling you a whole lot, and then you describe that one. And if that person is not telling the truth, you get everything wrong. So it is not always advisable to dwell on a single study to inform policy decisions. So qualitative synthesis is an approach to the synthesis, to the systematic review, where findings from multiple primary studies are pooled using words to summarize and explain the findings of the synthesis. So over here, we use words and textual information. So the results are largely presented in the text and tables. So normally we use, instead of quantitative presenting using the statistics, the relative risk, the odds ratios, over here, no, we present in text and tables. So you see most qualitative synthesis, you'll find tables explaining everything. It can be done as a steady systematic review to answer a pertinent question, standalone question, and a standalone review, or it can be done to complement a meta-analysis. So sometimes, if, for example, you have done a meta-analysis, and then there are some aspects that meta-analysis, the statistical dimensions could not explain. You can now explore those theories, themes, and or other whatever it is in qualitative synthesis to unravel or uncover or to gain understanding about what the quantitative aspect couldn't really explain. So it's very important. Normally, it is used to address questions about meaningfulness, experiences, and a question related to feasibility and appropriateness. These are questions that are not suited to quantitative systematic review, which is meta-analysis. So these are the questions that, if you're doing something about implementation, meaningfulness, experiences of people, their perception, their attitude, it is best to do a qualitative synthesis to gain insight. Synthesis of qualitative research is still controversial. I know lots of people are over here who are qualitative, and I know if Tolib is there, because that's what a lot of people have been doing. So as soon as you raise this controversial, people miss a heartbeat. But that is it. Let me go back in retrospect to tell you a little bit about the genesis of qualitative synthesis. Even the quantitative synthesis started not long ago. As I said, in the early 1990s, about 3 decades ago, that is when we started talking about quantitative synthesis. But people would have really challenged any opinion that suggested that we could do qualitative synthesis in those days. Because how can you, something subjective matters, how can you bring them together? How can you even assess biases and all those things? But time has changed, and now this kind of qualitative synthesis increasingly has been accepted as a way of, as I said, of also investigating other things that quantitative evidence cannot. And now so many people are doing qualitative synthesis, but it is still in the infantile stage. It is ongoing. Things are not really well formed. People are coming out with ideas, and now and then they are still shaping the methods. So we don't have a specific or standard guideline for qualitative synthesis as you would have in quantitative synthesis. And as we go through, you will come across, and especially when I also do the quantitative synthesis, you can bring the two to the table and see the differences between them. Because qualitative synthesis relies more on subjective methods. And therefore, now what you're doing is that if it is so that it is under the domain of subjectivity, then what can we do? There's little we can do. But people have sat down, experts have sat down. No, we can still minimize the biases that normally confront us to make it transparent and reproducible. So if you bring in transparency, you have already taken care of most of the biases. And if you make it reproducible, it means that you have a clear guidance or guideline that people can follow to do the same study in other ways. So that is reproducibility and transparent way of doing systematic review has also been embraced over here in qualitative synthesis. So as you go forward, you see that most of the qualitative synthesis nowadays follow the systematic review strictly. They follow the systematic review process to synthesize the evidence. So let me bring this one table to you over here, what I was talking about. Or in systematic review, quantitative systematic review, all these things will be yes. That's guided by protocol. I'm using this one to show you the qualitative synthesis, the domains. When we have the thematic synthesis, as I showed you earlier on, the type of synthesis that we have under the qualitative domain. And then is it guided by protocol over here, or thematic synthesis? No. Realist synthesis? No. But now increasingly, most of them, people are, because there are no clear guidance, people are beginning to see that, okay, there's the need to now follow some protocols, and now even some realist synthesis. As you know, the principal investigation on the response project, Professor Tolib Milzoyev, he has, and the group, which I'm also part now, trying to publish some of the protocols from the response studies using realist interviews. So it means that now realist synthesis are being guided by protocol. But others, some of them, content analysis, no. Meta ethnography, no. There's no need for protocol except meta aggregation. Let's go to the next level. Search. How do they carry out the search? When you're doing a systematic review, the idea is to retrieve all empirical evidence. So every study that has been completed, whether published or unpublished, you should make an attempt to retrieve them. But is that the same for qualitative synthesis? No. There are some of them just to seek it seeks saturation. They have something when it reaches saturation. So it's not an attempt to make a comprehensive set. But nowadays, to the realist synthesis again, with the one that I have been part of, it has used comprehensive search strategy and methods to retrieve study. So I say that this table, other people may challenge it because things are evolving very fast, and the synthesis in qualitative way is gaining it's becoming the same as the quantitative synthesis. Over here, look at it. Content analysis needs, yes, it requires comprehensive search. Over here, meta ethnography. This one also saturation, except meta aggregation. So meta aggregation, we have, it is protocol guided, and at the same time, it requires comprehensive search. Let's go to quality assessment. Do these methods, if you're doing thematic synthesis, is it compulsory? Do you have to be bound by quality assessment? No. Look at the first three, they are all of them no. And then over here, meta ethnography is optional. If you like, you can do it, but you are not forced to do it. But when you come to meta aggregation, it is recommended, so you have to do it. And then look at the approach to synthesis. Over here, aggregation of themes, metaphors, categories, and then tacit. When you come to realist synthesis, tacit. This is in the qualitative domains. Tacit testing of implicit theories, building. If I think if Tolit is there, he may be laughing at me because this is his domain. So I don't have to muddle things up over here. And so, and I encourage you that there's an aspect ongoing, another capacity building aspect which deals with into the qualitative, into the realist synthesis. That is all that it does, is specializing in realist synthesis. That I encourage you to also participate. Is important. Yeah. And then when you come over here, look at the kind of approach to the synthesis. But I'm particularly interested in meta aggregation. When you come here, aggregation of findings into categories, and of categories into synthesized findings. And then let's go to the final one, synthesize across study design. Can you pull different study designs? In quantitative, no, you can't pull cohort studies and case control studies. Neither can you pull randomized controlled trials and cohort studies, no. No, you have to analyze separately. But over here, when you come, qualitative, you can pull, or if it is whatever study design that you have used, if it is focus group discussion, if it is snowballing, whatever method that you have used, you can pull. So study design is not important. And over here to meta aggregation too, you can also pull up across study design. So those are some of the characteristics of the study design that you come across. So over here, you can make a decision. When you're going to do a systematic review, which one will do? Because the systematic review is to, as much as possible, to address biases that confront us when we were doing quality assessment, you know. So if some of these are the sources that will introduce biases, and if they are overlooked, how confident are you in the final results? So let's now move on and see. When you are doing a qualitative synthesis, what you have to consider. Now, a whole lot of theories are coming up, and although a lot of progress have been made, we still have a lot to cover. So, and this area is evolving. So we don't have a prescriptive guideline on the conduct of narrative synthesis or qualitative synthesis, no. But other people are increasingly appreciating the fact that it is a good idea if you use some frameworks. So now this one, frameworks have been developed to guide the conduct of qualitative synthesis. So now I'm going to take you through some of the framework and what the frameworks seek to do. Framework for conducting narrative synthesis. So what the framework seeks to do is that don't just do things anyhow. At least you have to have some guiding principles. So first, you have to develop a theory. Then after you have developed a theory, you have to develop preliminary synthesis. They are stage-wise, from this to that, like how we build the synthesis as the first slide showed you, the level, formulating the review question, or systematic review, qualitative synthesis also do the same thing. But when it comes to the level of the synthesis, it's telling us that this is what you have to do and explore relationships in the data, and then assess the robustness of the synthesis. If you're able to do this 4 things, I think you are sure of at least improving the confidence in the data or the findings you would generate. Let's take them one by one. What do we mean? How do we develop a theory? So this is just quick. You can read volumes around each of these subheadings. You can read volumes around them, but just to let you know what it is, so that when you come across them, at least when you're doing the synthesis, you know that there are 4 at least guiding principles that I should follow. And therefore, they develop a theory is the first one. So how do you develop a theory? Because if you know the qualitative domain, most of the time that we are shaping our theories and then other themes, and those are the things that we work around. And that is one. So, for example, how the intervention works, why and for whom. You see, this is simple, but you can really talk a lot around this, how the intervention works. And this one is also the same in even quantitative synthesis, how the intervention works, and then why and for whom. You're talking about the mechanisms why and for whom, the population. So in the quantitative terms, you'll be talking about generalizability, how applicability, how can you generalize the findings? And these are the ones that you have to consider. Who would benefit from, or who can benefit from what I'm going to do? And this one can be presented in narrative or diagrammatic form. So it's like a conceptual framework. You have to now conceptualize the idea about the intervention, the part of the intervention, and then why, the mechanisms, and for whom. So if you're able to build that concept, at least it gives you some idea about what you need. It defines your remit for you. It pegs the bound for you so that you know where to operate. And then let's move on to, after you have developed the theory, you have to develop a preliminary synthesis. And this one is the initial description of the results of the included studies. So you have to have an idea, just take a quick look about what the initial results of the studies, and then organize the results to describe the patterns. So normally we would want to see patterns and other things. So you look at the direction of effect. What are the people saying? All of them are they saying the same thing? And then what factors influence or impact on the findings, and then implementation, and then the quality. You also have to look at the studies. By looking at them, you will see whether the studies are of good quality or not. These are some of the things that you can just explore looking at the data. So you have so many studies, and if a study is well conducted, by the virtue of your understanding in epidemiology and research methods, you know that this study has been well conducted. And if it is not, you can see straight away. And that is the ability to be able to discern, to explore. And then explore relationships in the data. How do we explore relationships? You have to explore relationship between the characteristics between studies and their findings. So this is a meticulous way. You don't just, when you're doing a systematic review, please don't be in a hurry to finish it. Because the whole idea is that you want to bring a body of evidence together to inform decisions by creating a single or two statements that policymakers and clinicians, or those who need to use it, should use to inform their decisions. So rushing through and getting it wrong at a point so you will not be forgiven. Why is this so? Because you know that systematic review, looking at the pyramid of evidence that I showed at that time, sits at the apex of the pyramid. That is, it is the epitome of evidence, the best form of evidence. And so you have to be meticulous in the way you go about things, so that at the end, you have the confidence to say that this has been conducted using best practices and guidance. And that is what, so don't jump, have time to explore relationships, the characteristics that are likely to influence the outcome or affect the outcome. Have the time to explore. And also explore the influence of heterogeneity. Heterogeneity is very important when we come to the quantitative synthesis. You will see that we have ways of dealing with heterogeneity. We can do subgroup analysis, we can do a whole lot of things, and then add that the ways that you will do, I don't want to preempt you on this because you'll be doing that one very soon. So don't have to explore heterogeneity and which areas, so we can look at the design, whether the design actually can influence the findings, whether the things, what have been done. So look at specific aspects of the studies. Things, for example, go to the table that I showed you and look at how was the search conducted. Did they assess quality? And then all those kind of things. If you look at this one, they didn't assess. And then knowing what the power or the effect of quality assessment. If a study has not done that, what are the likely effects that are going to maybe have on the overall finding? Those are some of the things that you have to look at. So look at the methods, the population. Some of the studies may be looking at relatively younger people. Others will be looking at the older people. For example, the COVID, when the randomized controlled trials came for the vaccine, you know, the story about this AstraZeneca and then the Pfizer and all those things. Some of them, I would mention them, were thrown into some discussion because of the population used. Other people had an opinion that the population that was used to synthesize the evidence was relatively younger than the actual population where the adverse outcomes are high, so that it may mislead people to show that, yes, we are getting very good outcome, which in principle, if it had been done in the population where adverse outcomes like death and other things, complications occur, it will have given different results. And yes, it is true. And these people have to debate that. And that is what you have to look into. The setting, normally the setting also would influence some of the interventions and even the culture and other things. You have to look at all those kind of things and then list them, explore between the studies to see where there are differences, so that when you are putting your studies into context in the discussion section, when you are interpreting your data, you can put the final results into context. The context are what we are discussing. So if something, these two studies found differences in their findings, you can say, okay, this is due to that, this is due to that. These are the ones that you want to take note of. So theories may help develop plausible explanations for observed differences. So that is once you have the differences, now you can build theories around them. So let's move on to the next. And then after this is the last bit of the guidance that has been proposed. Assess the robustness of the synthesis. So how robust your synthesis is. Normally, when you talk about robustness, this is in the domain of the quantitative synthesis, when you talk about sensitivity analysis, because all that sensitivity analysis is doing is trying to show how robust our finding is, to that the finding that we have is not really influenced unnecessarily by one particular maybe aspect, one factor or no. And so you take those factors that are likely to influence the finding into consideration in the sensitivity analysis, whether to eliminate those findings to see, and then including those findings and see whether the results will remain the same or it will change drastically. This is what sensitivity analysis is. But over here to qualitative, you can also do the same thing to look at the methodological quality of the included studies. You have to have an eager eye to probe, to dissect the studies to see where problems may occur. And then you also have to look at the credibility of the synthesis process. You see that the studies you are included are studies that you can't do anything about, because these are studies conducted by different people in different locations and settings. All that you have is to include those studies. There's little you can do to change their methodologies. But what you can do over here is systematic reviewing is a process. So during the process of doing the systematic review, you have to now use best principles not to introduce bias into the process. And that is the credibility of the process. So this is the aspect that is introduced by you, the systematic reviewer. But the methodological ones, these are the ones that will be introduced or have been introduced by the studies included, which you have little option to deal with, but you try to find ways to minimize them. That is why we're doing all those things to dissect, to find where these differences are coming from, so that we try as much as possible to make attempts to address them. So you may have to look at the key information in the primary studies. I've talked about them. And then now you can look at the overall assessment of the strength of the evidence and support it to support your conclusion. So having done that, that is what you can, and this is what we're going to look at. How do you assess the overall strength of the evidence? When you have explored this, you understand. So normally when I say that when you are doing a systematic review, don't jump. Read a lot, even to understand the question. Once you have the question, because immerse yourself in literature to understand the gaps in evidence over there. Two people may do the same, may do a systematic review or may do systematic reviews on a particular topic. One can come out with some findings that will uncover a lot of issues. One will just come out without coming out with any real findings that are pertinent to policy making or even clinical practice. It is depending on how widely you have read around the topic and what gaps you have uncovered. Because the more you read, the more you come across the gaps in knowledge and the whole idea of science. And for that matter, systematic review is an attempt to bridge a gap in scientific evidence. Because if the evidence is there, then there's no need to do research. But because the evidence is there and it is needed, that is why you do a research. So your research should be original. And that is why the same thing, systematic review should be original. Now, let me say this one again, especially from those who are coming from low and middle income countries and those who are now starting with the systematic reviewing. It is an area that you can publish a lot, but don't let the publication as the means of coming into systematic review. No, that, well, I want to get so many publications to my credit for maybe for promotion, and that I've said it over and over again. Please don't do that. Morally, it is wrong. Ethically, it is not sound, because systematic review produces the best form of evidence, and for that matter, you have to spend your time to do it. And nothing good is so cheap. That is a proverb like that. There's a proverb like that. Sorry. So you know that engaging in systematic review sometimes will require some time, but it's not because we're saying it takes a lot of time, so you intentionally spend a lot of time on it. We have also nowadays, we have the rapid systematic review, but these are done by experts. We know those areas that to consider. So immediately you can put things together without necessarily jeopardizing the evidence or compromising the evidence. So take note of that. So there are two main forms of, the two main areas that people consider, but I don't, if I mention it, probably I'll overhear too, because the realist synthesis is not part of it, but we have the meta-ethnography and meta-aggregation as the two main that most of the qualitative people, experts are promoting. But now, I can tell you the realist people are also, they are really aggressive and they are coming up and they are overtaking when I started exploring the nature of the qualitative domain, now realist synthesis is gaining traction. So don't consign them. And they are making up all the things that you saw in the table. which they were not doing. Now they are doing it. Search is comprehensive. They do quality assessment, do everything, and realism is coming up. But before then, it used to be the meta-ethnography and meta-aggregation. So I'm going to take my time to take you through a meta-aggregation. How do you synthesize qualitative data using meta-aggregation? And my preference is also going to be the meta-aggregation. So those over here on board, I know maybe Leonard is here, maybe Anna, and then Augustina, and then all of us. This is the stage you have got to, is now how to aggregate the data in the AMIFS data, the study. How to, and I would suggest that at this point you have to use the meta aggregation principle to aggregate the data. So let's see what the meta aggregation does and whether it is true we can use it. And those who are also doing a systematic review of qualitative synthesis data, what you can do with meta aggregation. It is simple and straightforward, and it's now the one which is leading in this area. So it started in the early millennium, that is in the early 2000s. So it's not long ago. That is why I'm still encouraging you, those from the low and middle income countries. If you haven't done a systematic review and you are just beginning, don't think maybe you are so late. No, you can catch up. It started not too long ago. A systematic review, the quantitative and everything is just recent evolution. So you are not far away. So if it started in the 2000, so we have just about 20 years now. And normally, look at, if you are in a developing country or a low and middle income country, some of these innovative ideas will come long. We take years, decades to catch up. But I'm telling you, in this area of evidence synthesis, it doesn't require a lot of money and it doesn't require anything. It's just your own ability, intuition. Try to challenge yourself and you will catch up. So it is not long. That's what I'm emphasizing over here. It started in the early millennium, in the 2000. The 2000 could even be 2010. And as I'm telling you over here, around 2010, we did not even still have guidelines for qualitative synthesis. Guidelines started just recently. So if you are doing qualitative synthesis, you can also become one of the players. You can now ground yourself in the area and become one of the authorities. You are not late. And especially since context and setting is so important in synthesis and qualitative evidence. You concentrate on sub-Saharan Africa. That is why I challenge all those that I'm working with. We don't do global synthesis anymore. I say focus your attention to sub-Saharan Africa. And if you focus your attention to sub-Saharan Africa, you can do most of the reviews that have been done elsewhere, and then focusing on sub-Saharan Africa with different contexts, different culture, different ideology, a whole lot of things. That is what I want you to concentrate. So qualitative meta aggregation is consistent with any of the systematic reviews that we talk about in terms of the methods, in terms of the process, and incorporates philosophical traditions of the critical and imperative paradigm. So everything is the same as the systematic review. And if you go back to the table I showed you, you will see that everything is yes, comprehensive search, yes, protocol guided, yes. Critical, does it require quality assessment for risk of bias? Yes. And does it, or everything is except pooling across studies. That is where it differs from the quantitative systematic review. But one key thing that you have to know over here is that it aggregates study findings as intended by the primary study authors, and it attempts to avoid any form of reinterpretation of the original findings. Take note of that. That is one of the, you don't try to interpret the original finding, but what do you do? You just try to aggregate the findings as they are. That's all. Don't interpret them. In the quantitative aspect, we try as much as possible to do conversion. Sometimes we we do data coding, convert this one to that and those. You may do some of them over here, but you don't change the interpretation of the original finding. We just extract the findings, and we're going to see what it's done over there. It uses the same thing as the quantitative approach. I've talked about that. So meta aggregation pools primary qualitative studies. These are some of these primary studies that you can find across phenomenology, and then the phenomenography, descriptive, qualitative studies, and then grounded theory, and all ethnographies. These are most the primary studies that you can combine over here. And when you come to phenomenon of interest, that is, it looks into experiences of interest, the form. Experiences of interest form the object of the study. So normally I've talked about that. Experiences, understanding, issue, those form the object of the study. As in quantitative systematic review, this is not experiences, but the object of the study may be as objectively defined, that you can measure. That is where over there we use objectives. But over here, I think people use the aims. Aims are used mostly in qualitative synthesis, but even now, most of them are also using objective. But if you're using objective, then it means that each of the specific objective that you want to assess should be SMART. You know the SMART, the acronym SMART. It should be this sensitive, all those, and that is what you should. It should be measurable, it should be this, and those are the ones that you have to use. And if it is not, then probably you have to change it from calling it objective to maybe something else. And a number of findings can be extracted from the studies that you are including. It can be up to 50 or even more, sometimes 100 findings can be extracted in the same systematic review, as opposed to quantitative review. Quantitative, normally the findings are few of them, because you are going to statistically synthesize. We look at few outcomes as opposed to qualitative synthesis. So you're going to see an example of that. You see so many findings that have been extracted, and I think Leonard, the qualitative specialist over here, the number of findings that you have extracted and included in the AMIF's results section. That is the same thing. But the findings can be aggregated to categories. So once you have extracted the findings, you can now put them into categories that you can combine a number of the findings into some categories. And then after the categories, we move on to the next level. And then after the categories, that will form one statement. We would go through it, walking through it. The categories then can be aggregated to form the synthesized evidence. So the endpoint is the synthesized evidence. It can be just one, it can be two, it can be three, or it can be more. Depends on the questions that you want to give to policymakers and those who need to use the evidence. But as I said, policymakers normally don't need a lot of recommendations. If you want your study to be taken seriously, you have to come out as specific recommendations that you recommend to policymakers and practitioners. If there are a lot of them, they wouldn't know which one to use. And that is why it is also very important whenever you're doing a systematic review, group your outcomes into primary and secondary. The primary outcomes may be 1, 2, or 3. Those are the main issues that policymakers and then those who need to use the evidence want. But the other ones are also there to help to understand some of the things, or they are not the main issues, but they also are informative. You can add them, those are the secondary. But if you also dealing with intervention, any form of intervention, then you have to also add another third one, which is the adverse events. So the categories should normally form the main headings of the results. So when you're writing the results section, the categories, not the findings. The findings are the ones that you have extracted. There are a lot of them, but you group them together to form categories on the basis of sameness or similarity, so or having the same context or idea, you put them there, and these are the ones that should form the headings of your results. So the steps in meta aggregation, normally it uses 3 steps, so it's a 3-step process. First step, the findings of primary qualitative studies presented in the studies are extracted as the findings, and this would include the themes, metaphors, concept, any of the outcomes that are interesting in the studies. You identify them and you list all of them. It can be hundreds, so please don't eliminate any findings at this stage or at the first step. List all of them. And when you have listed all of them, come to the second step. Then you now have to aggregate. Now you bring in the list that you have. The list might not follow in a particular order, so you have to go through them and logically now I add them together to form the groups. Maybe number 1, number 50, number 60, number 40, those are the ones that will form one group. It not necessarily mean that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 will form maybe the first category. No, you can just go through them. You may pick 1, 5, 6, which speak to the same maybe context, and then take it, or same theory, take it and form the category. And then after you have formed all the categories, then you come to the final bit of it. So the categories, you also aggregate the categories again, and then put the categories together to now form the final statement or the finding, which is called the synthesized finding. So it's not difficult. 3-stage approach: first, second, and third. Once you're able to do that, then you're in the process of now reporting or synthesizing a qualitative data, or doing a qualitative systematic review. The rest of the processes are the same as that of every systematic review. So synthesizing across study designs, meta aggregation focuses on study findings, not the study data. Take note of that. The emphasis is the study findings, not the study data. The study data is what quantitative as reviews will be concerned with. They will always want to synthesize the data, the study data, but over here, no, the study findings. So all the findings that the studies have reported, you extract them. So different designs and methods, or different designs and methods, for example, phenomenology, ethnography, or grounded theory can be mixed in a single synthesis as long as they focus on the same phenomena of interest. So you can group, and I talked about them already. You can group all these things as soon provided they focus on the same phenomenon of interest. So the synthesized finding, I've talked about it, and this is what, the final results that you need to inform your policy and recommendation. Let me take an example from here. This is a study that has been published, and I've cited it. So I'm using it to guide. This is an abstract that has been presented. Look at it. This is the format of the particular journal. So they follow the format. Problem statement. And they stated systematically review qualitative evidence regarding patient experiences of living with multiple myeloma. The main objective was to gain structure that might over here. Let me see. I want to gain structured, something is blocking me over here, but gain structured understanding of this experience, which is a prerequisite for advancing nursing care and ensuring it is effective. So this is in the area of the nursing care. They want to gain some understanding and experiences to help in the making some decisions over there. The literature search over here is comprehensive. Look at the, we are not talking about them. Data evaluation, they did this one using assessment of risk of bias, looking at the methodologic biases and other things, using the Joanna Briggs Institute's qualitative assessment and review instrument. And over here, the synthesis, that is what I want to emphasize on. So 11 studies fulfilled the eligibility criteria. From these, 84 findings were extracted. Each finding was assigned a level of credibility. You're going to look at it. Normally, when we are doing systematic, qualitative, systematic review, these are the things you will see. Sometimes you find a C, you find something, some numbers over there. You're going to see the credibility, and then you sometimes you find a U, unequivocal, credible, or unsupported. These are some of the things. So the finding that some of them is so credible. Then if it's credible, just give it a C. But that's just some of the things that you will do. I'm only highlighting on the things that you're going to do. So if you're doing it, these are the things that you come across, and read literature around how after this presentation, and if you are doing a qualitative synthesis, try to read around the synthesis, knowing this is the process that we are going to follow. And then findings were grouped into 11 categories. Look at what they said, 84 findings in total, but these findings were grouped into 11 subcategories and synthesized further into 4 main categories that form the synthesized evidence. So the 4 main evidence that were synthesized from the 84 findings, which should inform the policy and decisions, are distress, a different body, coping. This is not, I'm not showing because these are coping mechanisms in myeloma, perceptions and other things. So we don't have to read the whole paper, but just the concept, what the contribution of other people. So, and this is how they concluded. So I'm going to, they have their own conclusions, but let me move forward. And they have also talked about implications for practice and sometimes for policy. So I've taken this part away, the synthesis, bring it over here. So this is the same thing that I've repeated over here. Look at each finding was assigned a level of credibility. These are the ones that I've done over here. And the findings were grouped into 11 subcategories and synthesized further into 4 domains. I'll put it over here initially. This, I've decided to extract the findings. Look at the findings from each of the studies. And this is what you're going to do. The first study over here was written in 2013. These are the findings. How many of them? 12 of them were independent or separate findings. List all of them, extract all of them. And then you move to the next study. You look at the next study was published in 2006. This one from here, we are adding up to make the number. Otherwise, you also have to make this one 1, 2, 3, 4. You count and know the number of findings over here. And then you go to the next one. And then there's also the third study. We said they included 11 studies. So 11 studies, you have to extract all of them. It looks like those who have done systematic review before, this might be too slow for you, but those who haven't done the systematic review before, I think they may even consider this one as maybe fast paced. But if you think something, you have anything, please raise your hand so that I give you the moderator, Dr. Podria will give you the opportunity to maybe stop me to say or to address something or to consider any concerns you might raise. Give me one minute. What? Just 1 second.
So whilst we are giving him 1 second, maybe we can stretch.
Yes, I think that one. Let's stretch for maybe some few. I'm back. The heater went and now I saw that I'm feeling cold and that's so I just decided to put it on. But I'm back. But if we can let them stretch for maybe 5 minutes, and then
okay.
Would that be okay? because it's not always advisable to keep. Or moderator, Dr. Kodria.
Yes. So I advise we stretch for about 5 minutes, and then we can, whilst we are stretching, if you can have a look. So there's a question in the chat.
Okay.
Yes, and please, if you have questions, let's put it in the chat, or we can go ahead, raise our hands, and then ask questions. Whilst we are taking the 5 minutes break,
here, I can't find the chat on the screen where I'm projecting.
So the question was how to assess the quality of qualitative studies.
Okay, so please, when we come back, please just remind me, and then yes, I would just try to say something before I move on.
Okay, that's fine.
Okay, thank you.
So please let the questions flow. You can type it into the chat or raise up your hand and ask your question. So you can grab your coffee, cocoa, water, or stretch. Okay. So welcome back. Please post your questions. If you have any questions, you can post them in the chat.
Is it already 5 minutes?
Yes.
Okay. Just a minute, yeah.
Okay, no problem. Okay. We only have one question in the chat. So either it is extremely clear that we don't have any questions, or we are extremely confused.
So yeah. Shall I go ahead and answer it now?
Yes, please go ahead.
Okay. Let me see my. So how do we assess qualitative studies. That's not the question.
Yes, the quality of qualitative studies.
The quality of qualitative studies. So the other time, if you were part of the person who asked this, I don't know whether the person was part of the last synthesis, the last webinar we did. You see, the quality of synthesis, we have so many tools available. And I gave the sources, I gave so many of the web and the links that you can follow to get those tools available. We have the critical appraisal tools, we have other which are not critical appraisal, but actually tools, guidance for assessing quality. There are so many of them, it's not just one. So it is up to you to look, to check, or to assess your study, the type of study you are doing, and then the particular guideline or guidance which is suited to your study. You don't have one. So normally, when I'm doing systematic review, the quantitative, let me use that one, domain. You may have a case control study. You may have cohort study. Each of them have different epidemiological issues. So you don't have to assess them the same way. And each of them, we have specific tools that have been designed for use to assess or for assessing the quality of these studies design. So the qualitative, if you are doing implementation research, is different from when you are doing something like assessing the coping mechanisms of somebody. So it depends on the domain. There are so many studies, tools over there. I'm not going to recommend any particular one, but it depends on you. And then your understanding in the methods of the study to know where biases are likely to come from and what you need to do to address them. So if that particular tool is not addressing or is not suited to maybe addressing those issues, then you just go for another one. Look for until you get the one which is really would be able to answer the questions or address the concerns you have. So you don't have a specific tool, but they are all guidelines, they are guided. And some of them you can rate. And the other time I talked about, that is when you have to give numerical grading, like after adding all those, you get 7/8 means good, and those normally, for those who have come from the Cochrane area, we discourage that one because the quality does not have any specific numerical value. You can't place value on it. It's like perception and those things. It's a judgment that you have to. So you have to which extent this one could have or has influenced this outcome. That is how you have to judge whether it is likely or it is not, or it is unclear. Those are the ones that you can do now instead of assigning quantitative value. So if you want, visit the last webinar we did. I listed a lot of the sources you can look for qualitative tools to assess the quality. If you want, probably when we finish, I'll look it up and send it to you, give your details, and I can send it to you. And if you are there, probably you can unmute yourself and let us know the answer I've given is okay, or you need more so that we can arrange for maybe further discussion. And you should know that this is not discussing quality assessment. No, we have finished with that. The work we are doing is synthesis.
Yeah.
But there's so many tools out there that can help you. And if the moderator, when you are done and then you think I can go ahead, you give me the green light and I can go start again.
Please go ahead and start. So he says
Okay.
It's okay. Your answer is okay for him.
Okay.
You can go on with the presentation.
Okay. So let me continue from here. We go to the part that that is where we were. And I said that you have to list all of them, and this is what they are looking. Look at some of them. So current participation, and then current this participate, physical activity, perceived benefit, all those, these are different things. Perceived benefit of physical activity, and then you list all of them to this. And then we go to this. There are 11 studies. This is I think the fourth. You list all of them. Some of them will report only few findings. Look at this one, only few of them. This next one too reported few findings. 1, 2, 3,
Tony,
4. Hello.
Sorry to interrupt. So there's a hand up from Alaji Oroma.
Okay.
Is that a question? Hello? Alaji, can you unmute? Okay. So please go ahead.
Oh, sorry, I have even.
Yes, hello.
Hello.
Yeah, thank you, Doc. Thank you, Doc. Well, we are learning a lot, really. We are learning a lot. But I'm confused somewhere. I really want to know, in a systematic review, using the qualitative and then the quantitative synthesis, which one may be more appropriate? I want to know which one may be more appropriate, the quantitative and the qualitative in a systematic review case. Which one may be more appropriate?
Yeah.
I really want to know that because I am confused as we are going.
Yeah.
I want to know which one may be more appropriate, the qualitative and the quantitative for a systematic review. Thank you.
Okay, good. This is a good question, isn't it? Very good one. Which one is more appropriate? The simple answer is that it depends on the question you want to answer. So I said, whenever you want to answer subjective things that are, when you talk about subjective things, feelings and those things that the individual, him or herself alone, knows what is going on, like pain. Now, if two people can experience pain in different ways. Some of them, when they have headache, you hear them and doing all sorts of things, let people know that they are in pain. Some of them, somebody may be going through severe pain, but sometimes we won't see the person is even in pain. This is subjective. And then people's experiences, the way and manner you went through certain maybe unfriendly, maybe how do you call it? You had some of this, I don't know how to put it, or encountered, will be different from somebody's experiences. So when you are dealing with experiences or you want to understand things that cannot be quantitatively measured, when you talk about quantitative, it's something that can be measured, but these are not something that you can really measure. We attempt to assess to get a grade to that level, but normally we can. These are suited qualitative synthesis. So that is when you can use qualitative, you can do systematic review, qualitative systematic review. But if you want to measure that, what is the effect of this on that? You want us to know. Then you would want to assess by using quantitative because you want values. How many people get cured when you treat them with maybe this new disease? For example, this COVID-19, and normally now people are talking about vaccine and all those things. So we are talking about prevention. So you're thinking that when you give the people, maybe 100 people, how many of them are likely to get full protection? That is what we're talking about, vaccine efficacy. So one of them came and said, okay, our vaccine efficacy protection rate is about 95. Some of them will say 85, so you weigh. They are values that you can put because they have assessed so many people and they have brought their results together to tell that. So if I've given the vaccine to 1 million and let me make some small numbers that we can get around it. I've given to 100 people and then maybe 90 of them are killed. Automatically, I can say that, okay, 90% have got full protection. No, it has 90% full protection rate, isn't it? Because 90% got it. This is the quantitative one that you want to assess. Or when you want to use the relative risk ratio, odds ratios to do answer questions. These are numbers. The things that you can't assign numbers, you can't analyze using numbers are the ones that you would use qualitative. Let me also tell you that you also look at the study design. It depends also on the study design. Normally, the qualitative designs, you see that these are the focus group discussion. They don't bother about the numbers that you need to include. You need about 5 people to write a whole publication. Whilst if you're doing a quantitative, we have something called a sample size determination. and then you calculate your sample size using some parameters to get a sample size that will power your study. So we are dealing with numbers, and then you have to make sure that one, maybe that study would include maybe 500 people to get your study powered. This is quantitative. But if you are dealing with qualitative, you don't talk about numbers. And I think when I'm doing the quantitative part too, I'll have an opportunity to also bring that aspect, that dimension, so that you can put into context. I'm sorry, probably you are one of the people who didn't start with us. We have traveled a long distance. As you could see from the beginning, the chart I gave, you see that we started with we are now at the 7th level, and then we're almost done. So these are the ones, if you were part of it, you know where qualitative systematic review will be indicated. But look at the study design. If the study designs are from qualitative studies, ethnography, snowballing studies, those ones you can't do quantitative review, because the underlying message are around themes, theories, and those kind of things. And these are the ones that are suited to qualitative. And this kind of things have to be assessed using qualitative systematic review. And the other way around, when you want to know how many people, the proportion and those things, will be the quantitative. Have I answered your question? Can you respond?
Yes, Doc, it's not clear. Thank you. Yeah, thank you. It's clear.
Okay, so we can move on. So we are still talking about the number of studies included. Now we go to the last part of it. And then you see we have how many findings? 84 of them. But when you are starting, normally I don't think you should be able to, this will be the final part when you have really finished extracting the data. That is when you're going to give them numerical numbers like this, 1, 2, 3. So what you do is that probably you extract each study separately, and then you extract the findings. And then when you are reporting, you know which one to maybe report as the first study. These have been chosen by the authors to make this one first study, another this one second study. I don't know, but sometimes too people can use the study design or the year the study was published or when the study was conducted. So many things can be used to guide which one study is reported first, but normally it doesn't matter where each study is, unless you want to learn some trend aspect of trend. Maybe from this year to 2005 to this, what has transpired? Then, because you're looking at time effect, you want to now grade them or group them according to maybe the ones that was conducted, the oldest to the newest. That is what you have to, or maybe the setting. These are some of the things that you have to do. But nothing, whatever you do, the final results will be the same. This will not influence unless the reason I have given. So now let's see what has been done. So we have extracted the findings over here, 84 of them. And then now we decided to now aggregate the findings over here. And then we got how many of them? 1, 2, 3, few of them. 1, 2, we got about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, few of them. And then now look at this one over here, which is standing alone, network of safety relating to other patients with cancer. This one, I'm just using this one as an example, myeloma. Then we grouped all of them into what we call the subcategories of what? Family and friends, other people with. So these terms, you have to choose, group them to assign a particular meaning to that. So what is it? Or like you are paraphrasing everything, a long paragraph into one sentence, which will sum up everything. And that one also requires intuition and experience. So if you are not, you are a systematic reviewer. When you are doing a systematic review in an area which you are not an expert over there, bring somebody who is an expert in that area to be part of your systematic review. We call them content specialists. They are the people who can shape the content. For example, if I'm doing realist synthesis, I'm not an expert over there, but I can do realist synthesis, systematic review over there, because I'm following the same systematic review principles. And once I've followed the systematic review principles, I can do and report. But the concept, and understanding of them have to be shaped by somebody with expertise. Now, I look this one, how did they combine all of them to get this? I don't family and friends. Well, it doesn't mean anything to me because that is not my area, so I don't understand. But those people can just look at the data and create the categories for you that all these ones are speaking the same language. Let's group them into one heading. And then you get your categories. And after you have got the categories, you move on. And then now the next one, the final bit of that, I'm adding the final bit of that. This is the main category. This one should be, because I'm using this one, a study that has been already reported, because I will substitute the main category as what? Synthesized evidence. Synthesized evidence. That's the final bit of it. I said it's a three-stage or process. You have the first one, the findings, you list all of them. The second one, you get the categories. You have categorized them into a few number of categories, and then you pull all of them together to get a simple statement, one statement that will communicate all the ideas that were put over here. So let's go back. All the ideas that we put here, the 84, this simple sentence or statement is summarizing all of them. And that is where also requires a knowledge over here. If you are not an expert, you won't be able to do that. So work hand in hand, especially if you are a systematic reviewer. I've seen so many people, when they begin a systematic review, they see the process, and within a short time, because they want to publish fast, they don't even, they take those people who are those who can help them, and they go and hire somewhere to publish it. You can have your systematic review published because you have so many journals. Some of them look for, especially those that are not of high impact factor, those are not of high impact factors. They will accept anything, especially the predatory journals will accept anything and publish. But ask yourself, if you now produce a systematic review, that is a bit misleading, that you have really misled people. You shouldn't do that. So this one will have to be said before by a group or panel. The expert will sit down and make sure that the summary they have put over here, the statement, reflects all that they have extracted from the main study. And that is what we call the meta aggregation. So you have aggregated your data. And I'll say it again, that is all that we have to do now. We have to now create a table like this and then give one sentence or one summary. So the final one is that other contributions of other people, that is it. Relationships and contributions of family, friends, and health care professionals had great influence on patients' lived experience of support and distress. That is it. This is from the expert. This is not my area. So now at least you can talk about three of them that is the three of them that are clear to me over here: family, friends, and health professional. Their contribution from them. That is all that they are. If they get this support, I think they will be able to cope with this. We are going. I think most of you don't know myeloma. Those who are the health professionals over here know myeloma, and that is what. So it's not a serious disease, and people, it's like when you get a cancer, you know, the whole thing is that we know cancers don't have a treatment. The early detection is good, but depending on the stage, you have to go through coping mechanisms. So am I going to die? Sorry to say that. Am I going to get cured? There are so many questions that come into your mind. And then if your family has ever gone through a similar situation before, a family member has suffered from incurable disease, such as maybe some of this in the African region, we have known when they were plagued with this HIV/AIDS in the times that there was no cure. This brings back into memory. So the whole thing is that progression to death. You see the person, because all that is that you know the person one way or the other is going to die. And the person who is going to go through that, knowing that there's nothing can be done, has a lot of things to be concerned about. And the coping, we take things for granted. These are some of the things that qualitative synthesis can help us unravel. Qualitative will just tell you how many people are dying and us against that. And a few of the things, how many people are doing this. But we can't delve down deep into some of these issues about their coping mechanisms. And this is why qualitative studies, systematic reviews are increasingly becoming vital in evidence, in policy, and also even in practice. And so that you know. So when your family members, you have family members around you, you have friends around you, you are able to cope better. Now, let's even think about this isolation, the COVID-19, now people are isolating in their room. When you have isolated for 1 week, you see that how uncomfortable it is. Just hello.
Oh, yes, sorry to interrupt. So there was a hand up and for some reason it's just disappeared. So,
yes, please. Thank you.
So there's a question.
Yes, Olayinka Bamdele from Nigeria. Thank you for the presentation. As you were presenting on the example you gave, that was a patient experience of multiple myeloma.
Yeah.
I want to ask, what was the theory? Was it theory driven? Because at your initial presentation, you made mention of it should be theory driven to know how it works, the approach behind it.
Yeah. So the theory driven, yes, this one was theory driven, and I was using that one to you as some of them will not go through the stages that I give, the 4 guidance or the guidelines that have been given to help this synthesis or qualitative synthesis. When we get to the quantitative, we have guidelines that you don't have to, and we even have the PRISMA guideline. We have how to report, and so if everything has been just packaged for you, you only have to now supply information over this. So because people have taken their time. We have the methods group, and now we also have the methods group even in qualitative. All that they are doing, that they are trying to help to get the information to guide people who are doing it so that they don't make mistakes. Because the idea is to come out at what? Findings that we would have confidence in to inform the decision. So as you are saying over here, if I had shown you the main paper, is theory driven. So they have defined all the themes, the concept, everything, and the kind of thing that they are going to do. And this is the final part of it, this is the synthesis part. So you write your protocol, and that is where you specify everything, what you're going to do. And then after you've done you have written the protocol, now you search for the studies. You have got so many studies, and then you screen, you select, they will tell you how many studies were retrieved, sometimes in the thousands. But after going through them, 11 studies met the eligibility criteria, the inclusion criteria, and that were included in this study. And this is the synthesis part. How they went about synthesizing the evidence that is what I'm using the meta-ethnography, meta-aggregation to show you. But if meta-aggregation is the analysis that you are going to use, it should even be pre-specified in the protocol that my study systematic review will use meta-aggregation. You have to describe everything succinctly in the methods, and that is what I would say. So this one is theory-driven, and they will have to define all the concepts that they want. So I was also saying that you have to bring people who are experienced in the coping strategy in the area, those who maybe have been dealing with pain management, maybe coping mechanisms and other things to help you to now create the concept and the theories that you need to test. So so I think, yes, have I answered your question? But you need to read, yes, if you want to do, you have to get papers and follow through. This is a guidance I'm giving you, not specific. It shouldn't be taken as maybe being a content specialist in this particular study I'm presenting. No, I'm using this one as an example so that if you are doing a qualitative synthesis, you know the steps to take to get there. The protocol is different from what we are doing over here, but this should have been specified in the protocol. So if you are not part when we began, you've missed a lot, but there will be an opportunity to be part of. So that
thank you. Can I also I have another question? it relates to a reinterpretation that you mentioned.
Yeah.
The findings should not be reinterpreted.
Yes.
I want to know why. Because of the conclusion part of the study.
Yeah. So the findings should not be interpreted. Let's go back to this one. And this is where I was talking about. These are the findings from each of the studies. So now come back. I said that the qualitative synthesis or qualitative reviews are in the domain of the subjective thinking or subjective domain. Let me put it in the subjective things about or subjectivity. It means that we are talking about people's experiences, feelings, and it is only that particular person that understands what. So this study conducted, and as I said, normally qualitative studies don't use a lot of people, maybe one or two people that gathered the information. And this is what the person reported. When I'm sick, normally when my family members are not around me, I feel more pain, or sometimes there's a so much. This is what the person is telling you. So you normally, that is the, you record something, is it inscription, you record, and later on you come and then you now try to play it back and just write assets. So normally inverted commas, you write everything as they have reported. We are saying that don't change what they have said. And that is a principle in the qualitative studies. Now you want to make me like an expert in qualitative studies, yes, but I don't want to put myself as an expert over there. I'm only teaching, but my emphasis, I'm a quantitative person. I've done all that quantitative, but I also appreciate that I've been in qualitative, so many of them, and I'm teaching also for some time. This is what I can. Please, don't change their meaning, put access, that's all. So after you have put over there, it is at the level of the categorization that you, the person who is doing the synthesis, is trying to form something which belongs to you. So over here, let's go to the next level. Over here, look at the family, friends, family and friends. It has not been mentioned over here as one of those, isn't it? As the findings that you have extracted, which is a don't change. But you can sit down and scrutinize and group them into all that was said over here. Look at this 22, all those, and you can group them up into family and friends. It's talking about them. That is where you, as a systematic reviewer, would have the opportunity to start building something. This knowledge is yours. It's not from them, but it is coming from this. Over here, if you are not careful, you get muddled up with what they told you, because somebody can look at the data again, and then what you have put here, family and friends, the person will put something else. It's not family and friends. And the other people with myeloma, the person, some people might also find different things. So that is, it is over here that you have to take care. What now you are saying that you communicating exactly what you have put over here as the findings. And then over here, when you go to the next stage, that is where over here, it is also coming from you as the systematic reviewer. This is over here. If you're also not careful and you don't scrutinize things well, and you don't bring to bear the expertise, you will also muddle up over here at the final stage. And if you muddle up over here, you have ruined everything, the systematic review. So the first part is not your knowledge. So put as is. That is why I said, don't try to interpret them. Put the findings as, and I was talking about the findings. In qualitative studies, the first point that you extract, I'm talking a lot about this because I know a lot of you would also be, a lot of you may have the same question. So I'm trying to use this one to explain. This is the findings from each of the studies you have extracted. Extract them as they are. Don't interpret them and change them. But this might not be as simple. This might have been written in a long sentence. We only have to paraphrase without interpreting, make sure they are the same. Diabetes, distress from experience symptoms, distress from body image changes. These are some of the things that they are talking about. And that is what they are, and they put them there. And then later on build together and get the categories, and then now get the final synthesized findings. Have I explained to you it is not this level, the category level, and it's not the main category. Although you have to make sure that you don't change the meaning when you get to the category and the main category level. Have I?
Yes, you have sufficiently answered this question. Thank you so much.
Okay.
Thank you.
So we can move on. Now, this is another example, which is also showing you the categories. This is what I like. This one is taken from the John Briggs Institute. You see, this one, instead of over the other one, they call this side subcategories and main categories. That's what I'm saying, that depending, you see, this doesn't change anything, the finding. But normally, principles and concepts are very important. So normally, who have followed my question, normally my exams, I have maybe about 10 questions that I frame around concept and principles, because I say, if you don't understand concept and principle, how can you understand main issues? The concept and principles are very important. That is why we encourage you that as you are going along, learn your concept and principle. This one, there are two different things. Findings, this one is findings, and over here too, we have findings. They are the same, so you don't have a problem. Over here, look at subcategories. Over here is category. It doesn't change anything, but from meta aggregation principle, we have findings, categories, and synthesized findings. But this one, they didn't give us the synthesized findings, so main category. So I'm only trying to highlight this on the fact that if you find a study paper and it has used the main category as the final part of the systematic review, don't be confused. They are the same. And if I found subcategories, they are the same. But this one doesn't make much more sense. This one makes more sense, because findings to categories and categories to synthesized findings. It's not as if all along we are not synthesizing. You are synthesizing along because you are building. And if you go back to the meaning I gave, in an attempt to build just a concrete information for from the studies that you have. And this is what, and the final one is what you communicate to policymakers. So policymakers who are busy normally will not go through, who are not interested in how you did this, how you did all these things. They know that if you're an expert, they put their trust in you that you have done the right things right. And that is why if you don't do the right things right, you are highlighting that so much. So they only use the final statement that you have produced for the policies. So yes, a study has been done, a systematic review, and this is what the systematic review says. So let's try to maybe let's look at the social system. How can we maybe improve systems such that those who are going through these problems will have this support and this issue or care? This is what policymakers will do to help. And this is what clinicians also, if the person is probably on admission or something, how they go about. So this approach is what I want you to use. This is the actual meta aggregation principle. Findings, categories, synthesized finding or findings. So, and over here, the summary of this one is all systematic reviews include some narrative synthesis, whether it is diagnostic. We're going to go over there, you see whether meta-analysis or because the part you have to describe. That is why on all, we have the characteristics of the included studies. All systematic reviews will have to have that table. Even including this one, I had it, but I later on took it out. I would have shown you how the characteristics of the included studies, the year the study was published and the year the study was conducted, yeah, different things. I normally emphasize that. This is something that I normally emphasize. It may be sometime you write a paper and then it takes maybe 5-10 years to publish the paper. The publication will show that this paper was published or conducted in 2020. Meanwhile, the actual study was conducted in maybe 2013. So you have to make sure so that if there's a changing maybe care or changing aspect of the care that is delivered is changing, then you can now put that one into context. So it's very important. You can also bring all the things that are of a particular importance to the study. The characteristics, you use the PICOS element, which are my population, which are the population, or which population will benefit. The setting, is it low and middle income countries, any of them, or is it urban versus maybe rural, all those kind of things. So you have to take all of them into consideration to describe the characteristics of the included studies, and it should be succinctly written. It is the first table which gives us an idea of what the studies you've included in the systematic review are. It gives us a snapshot, and that is where we can talk about heterogeneity and all the other things, and even some of the things before you even come to the synthesis. So it is very important, take note of that. So a systematic review, and this qualitative systematic review may be done alone. I've talked about that. This is a summary, or may be done as a complementary to meta-analysis. So that is what you would, and mostly, and the question, come back to the question one of you asked, I've forgotten the name, when to do a qualitative systematic review. You can do a qualitative systematic review when quantitative systematic reviews are inappropriate. That is when. So the questions that you have framed, the questions you want to answer, quantitative systematic reviews cannot answer them. And then it uses the systematic review principle, so you have to follow. Now, if I'm going to do, unless otherwise, I will prescribe the meta aggregation. But apart from the meta aggregation, or the realist would also is a meta aggregation in other form, except the concept and what we are talking about. So the themes, some of them are talking about context, some of them are talking about, those are the things that you have. Some of them are talking about phenomena of interest, some of them are talking about, those are the kind of things. So those who are doing, want to do qualitative systematic review, you also have to ground yourself in some of the qualitative designs and the issues that really qualitative systematic review is considered. It's very important. Otherwise, you may do qualitative systematic review around some of the concepts that are not appropriate. So you have to take note of them. And then apart from that, the system is the same. You have to formulate your question. You have to write your PICOS. You have to search. They do the inclusion and exclusion criteria. You have to search electronic databases and retrieve studies. You have to screen and select studies. You have to manage the studies. You have to extract data. You have to assess quality, and you have to synthesize. This process is the same, so it's not different. That is why I'm saying that if you are a quantitative systematic reviewer, you can easily do a qualitative systematic review if you have content expert on board to guide the content. And if a framework can help, if you're doing a systematic review of qualitative nature, a framework can help you to synthesize your evidence. So I think that is all for the qualitative. And then there may be some readings that now this is the first time that we have started doing this this webinars that is online. It used to be one-on-one, so I have the opportunity to write, maybe flip chart, to write a whole lot of things to explain. But over here, we are now also evolving to it. So in the next few maybe months or something, all these things that we have done, you would now revisit this once and now do them again, because this is also somewhere that we are also learning. We are learning how we can now deliver online courses. So some of the examples and how you would have, I would have wanted us to go about things. The hands-on would not, most of them, you'll miss some of them. Yes, but let's see. So this is where we are ending today. If you have questions, or otherwise, if I think we have still more time to spare, probably I can start with something small and leave it there and continue from another time. So it will come from the moderator. whatever is okay with the moderator. So because you have 15 minutes and then you can, yeah.
So we'll take questions. So we have Tulip says, well done. So we are very grateful for this thorough discussion. So I have learned a lot. And I am purely qualitative researcher. My quantitative is not good at all. So all the things you were saying resonated with me. If I have interviews, it's the same systems I'll go through, you know, to have categories, themes, and all. So it was very, very useful. And we'll take this time. We have about 13 minutes to have questions. So you have a lot of messages there.
Can I stop sharing my slide?
Yes, you can. Yes, you can. But just to tell colleagues that the recordings of these webinars, you know, that we've been doing over time, you find it on the AMIPS website. Anna shared the link. So if you go to the chat, you find the link there. You can click on it and then you get the different, so the 7 that he talked about, all that we've done from the beginning. You can go back to play and the recording and learn from it. So if we have questions, you can go ahead and raise your hand to ask your question, or you can type it here. So thank you very much. It was very useful and great presentation, excellent presentation. Can we have questions then? Was everything very clear? Okay. Tony, I think we don't have any questions from colleagues at the moment. And since maybe you can tell us a little about the next webinar.
Okay. The next webinar, let me see if I can even preempt you with this one to share this. I'm going to read.
So this is where we are going to look at the quantitative synthesis. Focus mainly on quantitative synthesis.
Yes, so this is where it was part of this, but I later just decided. So this one is going to also start with some introduction. So let me show it over here as a slide mode to see. So we are going to talk about quantitative, but normally it is not part of what other people do. It is like, sorry, when I had to ship in the study designs, when we were doing the quality assessment, nobody would want to do that. Study designs that achieve people through the type of epidemiological studies that you come across when you are assessing quality of the studies. Because I felt that most people are from low and middle income countries are beginners in this, so that will also help. The same way I'm doing that. This is not part of it, but I can take you through that. The data for the form of data that you are going to encounter when you are doing a quantitative synthesis or quantitative systematic reviews. And then people will talk about categorical, quantitative, and those things. No, all that I'm talking for you to take home with is that we have only 2 forms of quantitative data, 2 forms. We have dichotomous or binary. That is either the outcome happens or doesn't happen. An individual can be at one place, just that. And that is what we're talking about. So either dead or alive. I will just highlight this one. And we have also continuous data. The continuous data is anything that is measured. But I don't want to whet your appetite. I'm stopping here because that is what I'm going to use to start the next one. I'm going to take you through the effect measures that you come across before we start the actual quantitative systematic review synthesis, what we do, the fixed effect model, the fixed effect versus the random effects model, when you use do those kind of things that we talk about, heterogeneity, the I-squared, a lot of things that what you need to consider. So it is so very interesting. I don't want to, but I'm asking you those who, sorry about my communication went late. Do you think that I thought I had sent it it was hanging in my inbox. Was it the draft box? I found this just late, and I said, oh wow. So I didn't get most of the people that would normally would attend. I think some of them, but it's still okay. Tell them us that the next one is going to be interesting as well. We're going to look at how you can do this. And because that part of the protocol is important, because in the protocol, you have to outline whatever you're going to do in return, that is how do you call it, priority. So state, oh, I'm going to analyze this. These are the effect measures that I'm going to use. I'll do this, I'll do that. And that one should be succinctly written. So it is really important. And that is when we have our first idea about how to create the forest plot that normally you find. And then you find a diamond over there and all those things interesting. And then how we interpret them, and how you can even use confidence interval to now judge whether a study is statistically significant without using the normal p-values, because when we say that is 0.00, so it is statistically significant, but is it of value? We're going to see that p-value is probably, you have to stop consigning it to history and now consider use confidence interval. But how do you understand, how can we use confidence interval and what additional information it is carrying? So this is my domain. So please come and let's share that. And then this is what, so this is an advert to you already. The flyer will be sent to you. So now yes, we will find another flyer coming with quantitative synthesis. So now we have done the qualitative synthesis, and quantitative synthesis coming on, and see how far we can go with, especially those who are doing a systematic review and writing protocols. I think that is what I want to say.
Okay, thank you so much, Tony, for your time and for the advertisement for the next webinar. So on behalf of all the projects, so AMIPS, Response, Succeed, Chorus, we want to thank you so much for your time. And we are really looking forward to the next webinar. Okay, so thumbs up. Thank you so much. This was very informative. Okay, so colleagues, all the best. And we'll definitely will meet again for the next webinar. Thank you. And bye. So the recording again.
Thank you.
Bye. Okay.
Thank you.
Find it on the AMIPS website.
Yes.
Thanks, Tony. Bye.
Bye, Natalie. Bye.
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 Bye.